Why do you find it so hard to believe?
Why do you find it so easy?
It's never been easy!
The essence of John Locke, the TV character, not this guy, was discovered on the very first day of Lost's writer's room. In an essay reflecting on his time working on the first 2 seasons of Lost, veteran TV writer Javier Grillo-Marxuach recalled, "Among other core notions that came up on that very first day was the notion that Locke was a warped, frustrated man whose mystical experience as a result of the plane crash had brought him to see himself as an enlightened figure whose destiny was to be revealed on the island." Locke, from the beginning, was not written to be a genuinely enlightened figure, but rather a person who has come to see himself as an enlightened figure.
Have you ever stopped to think that these delusions that you're special aren't real? That maybe there's nothing important about you at all?
And today I want to talk semi-coherently about that warped, frustrated man, John Locke, from Lost, who just so happens to be my favorite character on my favorite show.
I was angry. I was obsessed.
Look how far you've come.
Now, obviously, the singular greatness of the greatest character in the history of television, network primetime category, cannot be contained in one video alone. So in this one, I just want to talk about one Locke character trait, one that's fundamental, but is often underexamined: his faith, as he calls it.
Boone, you gotta have some faith.
We all know Lost has a man of science, man of faith through line, and Locke defines himself in this critical scene from the season 1 finale as a man of faith. Oh, yeah, by the way, spoilers for the entirety of Lost.
I need for you to explain to me what the hell's going on inside your head, John. I need to know why you believe that thing wasn't gonna...
I believe that I was being tested.
Tested?
Yeah, tested. I think that's why you and I don't see eye to eye sometimes, Jack. Because you're a man of science.
Yeah. What does that make you?
Me? Well, I'm a man of faith.
Now, what's easy to forget is that this is actually somewhat different than how Locke thinks of himself earlier in the season.
I'm an ordinary man, Jack. I meat and potatoes. I live in the real world. I'm not a big believer in magic. But this place is different.
There's also that scene where Locke picks up Kate and Sawyer's path about a mile back and thought he'd say howdy.
Picked up your path about a mile back. I thought I'd say howdy.
He gives one of his long, portentous Locke monologues.
About 6 months after Jeannie's funeral, this golden retriever comes padding up our driveway, walks right into our house, sits down on the floor, and looks right at my mother, there on the couch. And my mother looks back at the dog. After about a minute of this, them both staring at each other like that, my mother bursts into tears. Dog slept in Jeannie's old room on Jeannie's old bed and stayed with us until my mother passed 5 years later. Then disappeared back to wherever it was she came from in the first place.
So, you're saying the dog was your sister?
Well, that would be silly.
I don't know if latter-day Locke would see that as silly. This seems like the kind of sign from the universe that Locke interprets as applying to himself all the time.
Well, that would be silly. But my mother thought it was. Thought that Jeannie'd come back to tell her the accident wasn't her fault. Let her off the hook.
And importantly, Locke referring to himself as a meat and potatoes, no religious hokum-pokum kind of guy comes directly after Walkabout, the iconic 4th episode where it's revealed that Locke was in a wheelchair before crashing on the island. And I think it's pretty clear in that episode that Locke understands his restored ambulatory abilities as something divine or spiritual. And yet, John Locke, at least early in season 1, does not think of himself as a man of faith. And albeit unwittingly, Locke explains exactly what's going on here in the rest of that scene from White Rabbit.
I think I'm going crazy.
Well, you're not going crazy.
No?
No, crazy people don't know they're going crazy. They think they're getting saner.
I'm probably not the first person to point this out, but that description fits Locke's character arc to a T. After a faith crisis in season 2 and a trip to St. Echo's non-denominational church and sweat lodge, Locke becomes a full-on zealot for the island. He is, as he says many times, supposed to do this.
You don't have a good reason to go in there either.
I'm going in there because I'm supposed to go in there.
You have to help me. You're supposed to help me. This was supposed to work. This is destiny. This is my destiny.
I'm supposed to do this, damn it!
This blind faith makes Locke susceptible to manipulation by the Man in Black.
Are you Jacob?
No, but I can speak on his behalf.
You know why I'm here?
Yeah, sure. Do you?
I'm here because I was chosen to be.
That's absolutely right.
Richard said I was going to die.
Well, I suppose that's why they call it sacrifice.
Back on the mainland, in another life, Locke had been given a secular diagnosis for this behavior. Amenable for coercion.
Did you know it would be me? What? In the truck? Did you know it would be me driving? Did they choose me?
Yeah, they chose you, John.
Why?
Because you hadn't been here long, didn't have a criminal record, and the psych profile said you would be amenable for coercion.
Amenable for coercion?
Hey.
And sure enough, the more man of faith Locke becomes, the more amenable for coercion he becomes, ultimately leading to Locke dying, tragically in one of the great episodes of the series. And we later learn from the monster using Locke's body that John Locke's final thoughts were, "I don't understand."
Do you want to know what he was thinking while you choked the life out of him, Benjamin? What the last thought that ran through his head was? I don't understand. Isn't that just the saddest thing you ever heard?
No, Smoke Monster, this is the saddest thing you've ever heard. In this video, I'd like to talk about the way the writers of Lost layered in allusions to biblical parallels to express the folly of Locke's tragic arc.
Long before Christ, the king of Judah was a man named Josiah.
Boy, when you say beginning, you mean beginning.
Yeah, sorry, we are going to talk about, the Bible as it relates to Locke's character arc. I'm not religious anymore. I did grow up super religious, so in addition to just having a lot of Lost fan theories in my head all the time, I also have a lot of unused Bible knowledge, and so I figured I would just put that stuff together for this video for the noblest of purposes, content. It's worth asking when Locke defines himself as a man of faith. Faith in what? Because unlike Echo or Charlie or Saeed, Locke is not religious.
We're just gonna build another one of your inventions. Hope it works this time.
That's right.
What if it doesn't?
Then the island will tell us what to do.
Yeah, he's talking about the island, right? Locke and all of the other hardcore believers in the island talk about the island as if it's a living entity that they have a personal relationship with. The island has a will, it has disciples and followers and a protector. But Locke's love for and reliance on the island is dependent upon the island validating Locke's status as a special boy.
What do you want from me?
I want to tell you that you're special. Very special. You're part of a design. You do realize that, don't you? That our meeting, me finding you, this is a sign of things to come. Great things.
Why would someone try to kill you?
Because they don't want me to succeed. They want to stop me. They don't want me to get back because I'm important.
Good fictional characters tend to have a tension between their self-perception and their true selves. Think of Walter White from Breaking Bad, who sees himself as an unjustly oppressed genius, but who is increasingly revealed throughout the show to have always been sort of the way he is. And Locke sees himself as a man with a selfless faith in the island, when in fact he is driven by an egotistical need to be important. The most important.
The island needs you, John. It has for a long time.
What makes you think I'm so special?
Because you are.
The psych profile said you would be amenable for coercion.
The tragedy is that Locke is special. He has some lovely qualities as a human being, an ability to inspire, to lead, to strengthen others, and he was absolutely brought to the island for a reason. He does, as Ben later says, have some sort of communion with this island.
I don't know how it happened, but you seem to have some communion with this island, John, and that makes you very, very important.
But his ego turns his positive spirituality into a toxic religious zealotry that leads to his own demise. And anyway, all that is actually pretty similar to a biblical character, Moses.
Jack, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What did you do for a living before you became Moses?
Nope, sorry, Naomi, it's not Jack, it's Locke. He's Moses.
But when he asks to see you, he gets marched straight up here as if he was Moses.
First, let's just take a minute to appreciate Michael Emerson and his amazing line readings.
Moses.
But Moses' arc is actually kind of similar to Locke's. Abandoned by his birth mother, Moses is raised by others and eventually begins receiving miraculous communions with God. God uses Moses to stand up against an oppressive system and free enslaved Israelites from a tyrannical pharaoh. Moses becomes the leader of the Israelites, following esoteric signs from God to guide his people toward the promised land. But he becomes frustrated with his sinful followers, who never seem to appreciate him or God or the amazing miracles they're always witnessing. And in his frustration, Moses takes credit for one of God's miracles. From the King James Version, yep, we're doing this, "And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believed me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them." Yep, as punishment, God appoints a new leader for the Israelites, and Moses is forbidden from seeing the promised land he had spent his life trying to enter. He dies, unspecial, another casualty of God's persnickety and fickle sensibilities.
The cabin, what if it's moved? Again.
It hasn't moved because I was told that this is where it would be.
I was told a lot of things, too. That I was chosen, that I was special. I end up with a tumor on my spine and my daughter's blood all over my hands.
I'm sorry those things happened to you, Ben.
Those things had to happen to me. That was my destiny. But you'll understand soon enough that there are consequences to being chosen. Because destiny, John, is a fickle bitch.
Locke is not a perfect one-to-one match for Moses, of course. I mean, Moses' mom only abandoned him to save his life, but Locke's destiny is the same. John rises up to free the others from Ben's tyrannical rule.
Jacob told me what we had to do. You don't get to make
He told
all
me
the
what to do,
decisions.
but he didn't tell you how. Because he wants me to suffer the consequences.
What consequences?
Whoever moves the island can never come back. So I'd like you to get on the elevator, John, and go back up. Richard and my people will be waiting 2 miles east of the Orchid. Waiting for me. Ready, willing, and able to share what they know. And then they will follow your every word.
And obviously the others are very excited about this. Ben does not seem like a chill person to have to live with on a day-to-day basis at all.
Don't mind them. They're all just excited you're here.
Excited?
We've been waiting for you.
But Ben doesn't want anyone to think you're special, John.
And why are you telling me this?
Ben has been wasting our time with novelties like fertility problems. We're looking for someone to remind us that we're here for more important reasons.
This plays right into Locke's ego. The more power and influence Locke receives, he begins to substitute himself for the island.
It's an island, John. No one needs to protect it.
It's not an island. It's a place where miracles happen. And if you don't believe that, Jack, if you can't believe that, just wait till you see what I'm about to do.
Rather than being a vessel of the island's will, Locke begins to see himself as the incarnation of the island's will. Like all characters in Lost, this tendency that Locke has is a direct result of childhood trauma. His parents abandoned him, and then he used that abandonment to manipulate him. And this is also a nice little microcosm of his arc on the island. But it's not nice, actually, at all, but nice from a writing standpoint. There's this really lovely scene where I think we see how John really feels in the last moments where he's dying. We hear the smoke monster talk about it, but, he doesn't count because he's not really John. But we do get that scene in a flashback where John Locke finally confronts his scam artist dad.
I know what I did to you was wrong.
You stole my kidney.
I was dying.
You could have asked me. You could have just asked me.
John Locke, like all our characters, are used as chess pieces in this game of the gods that Jacob and the Man in Black are playing.
These people, they're just using us. They're playing some kind of game and we are just the pieces.
But why? Why does God have to speak in riddles? Why couldn't the island just tell John exactly what he needed to do?
You say that like it's all inevitable.
Mr. Whitmore told me Richard Alpert said that you were going to die. So you tell me, John, is that inevitable or is it a choice?
What, you think I want to die? How could you possibly think that's a choice?
This is the exact kind of thing that he'd been looking for his entire life, and Jacob, or maybe the island itself, continue to manipulate him, in addition to everyone else for their selfish purposes. Why couldn't you just ask me?
Why would...
He was working for Charles Whitmore. He's extremely dangerous.
No! Whitmore came to me. He saved me.
No, Johnny used you. He waited till you showed up so that you could help him get to the island. Charles Whitmore is the reason I moved the island, so that he could never find it again, to keep him away so that you could lead. John, you have no idea how important you are.
In Lost, all of our characters are sort of haunted by their parents and generally speaking don't want to become them, even as they want to live up to them and not disappoint them. And in so doing, they end up becoming their parents. Sun becomes a lot more like her father, Jack becomes a lot more like his dad, and John Locke becomes a lot more like his dad. Because as John becomes leader of his own little tribe on the island, the others, or what we might call the acolytes of Jacob, he catches on pretty quickly to the fact that he's going to have to manipulate people.
What? He actually thinks staying was his idea. Not bad, John, not bad at all.
I'm not you.
You're certainly not.
I mean, think about it. To kill his con artist dad, he pulled a con to murder him. I mean, he literally did something his dad would do to kill his own father. But I'm dipping into my future daddy/mommy issues video. So like and subscribe for more reflections on parental trauma and Lost. Simply put, Locke has main character syndrome. And this is an ensemble show, my dude. Also, let's be real, if there is a main character in Lost, it's not John Locke, it's Jack Shephard. Jack is the one who will ultimately sacrifice himself in a noble, epic way to protect the island. Locke is the one who inspires Jack to go on that journey to become the Messiah. And that makes Locke pretty similar to another biblical character, John the Baptist. In the book of John, and I am sorry to be saying the name John so much, John the Baptist describes himself not as the Messiah, but as the man who makes way for the Messiah. Says the New Revised Standard Version, he came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light, he came only as a witness to the light. So John the Baptist is not the Messiah, but he was clearly special, and some folks back in the day were starting to think that he might be a savior.
So you trust him? Trust him? No offense, mate, but if there was one person on this island I would put my absolute faith in to save us all, it would be John Locke.
I did it because I sense you might be our best hope of surviving here.
As when word got back here that there was a man with a broken spine on the plane who could suddenly walk again, well, people here began to get very excited because that could only happen to someone who was extremely special.
So the Pharisees came to question just who the hell this guy thinks he is. John's baptisms and his message is undermining their religious institution. So the Pharisees ask John, hey, what's your deal? Are you Elijah? And John's like, no, obviously not. My name is John, idiots. So they're like, are you a prophet? And he's like, no. So the Pharisees are like, okay, well then, like, what the hell, dude? Don't you know that we Pharisees have all sorts of rituals and customs and lists and cumbersome rules that don't make any sense that you have to follow?
Why are you so angry, John?
Because you're cheating. You and your people. Communicate with the outside world whenever you want to. You come and go as you please. You use electricity and running water and guns. You're a hypocrite. A Pharisee.
And John says there's someone coming who will save Israel. John says that his role is recognizing who that someone is and paving the way towards that person's role as the Messiah. Long story short, this is totally what Locke does for Jack, right? Albeit unintentionally.
You're not John Locke. You disrespect his memory by wearing his face, but you're nothing like him. Turns out he was right about most everything. I just wish I could have told him that while he was still alive.
Locke is not the Messiah. He is not the next island protector. But everything he does, wittingly or not, makes straight the path of the Jack Shepherd Lord. Through Locke, many begin believing in the island, the way he did before he lost his way. John the Baptist is beheaded. He's just sort of murdered cruelly out of spite by the king, just as Locke is murdered cruelly out of spite by Ben. Because this is Lost, though, it's not quite as simple as all that. In my favorite time loop paradox, it's Jack who convinces Richard Alpert, in the past, to continue to pursue John Locke for the others.
Ask you a question?
Sure.
Over 20 years ago, a man named John Locke, he walked right into our camp, and he told me that he was going to be our leader. Now, I've gone off the island 3 times since then to visit him, but he never seemed particularly special to me.
You said you had a question.
You know him, Locke.
Yeah. Yeah, I know him. And if I were you, I wouldn't give up on him.
And appropriately, and pretentiously, I'll note that in the book of John, chapter 1, verse 15, there's sort of this time-loopy sounding verse. John says, he who comes after me ranks ahead of me because he was before me. So I don't know, time travel in Jesus or something. Again, the writers aren't going for perfect analogs, but rather lifting strategically from Christian mythology and creating a sort of cosmic gumbo.
It's kind of a cosmic gumbo.
Locke actually has another John the Baptist connection. In Luke's gospel, John the Baptist's father, Zacharias, is told by an angel that despite Zacharias and his wife being very old, they will soon miraculously give birth to a son, and they are to name that son John. He's going to be special and important. Zacharias doubts the angel, it seems impossible, and his punishment, Zacharias is struck with silence. And behold, thou shalt be dumb and not able to speak until the day that these things shall be performed. Because thou believest not my words, which shall be fulfilled in their season. Ugh. So, yeah, this is familiar, right? Season 2 of the show is where Locke loses his faith for a while. The hatch is not what he expected. And I have a whole video about the hatch and the button that I've got planned. I swear to God, it's less pretentious and Bible-y than this. But suffice it to say that Locke comes to believe that he has once again been made a sucker. He's been conned. None of it's real.
No! None of this is real!
God is dead. But the season ends with Locke having a critical revelation.
I was wrong.
And apparently his next thought was, and I'll never be wrong about anything ever again. After the hatch explodes and we meet back up with Locke in season 3, he has been rendered unable to speak by the island for doubting its divinity.
Hi, John.
It's good to see you again. Don't worry. You'll speak when you have something worth saying.
The island Zacharias Tim. Totally Zacharias Locke. This isn't just the writers lifting religious myth for the hell of it to make the show seem deep. All of these allusions to Bible stories cleverly tie Locke directly to characters who were chosen by God to play a small but important role in a grander purpose. Often characters who had to be taught a tough lesson from God himself. Locke is not Jesus. He's the guy who paves the way for Jesus. He's not Joshua, who leads the Israelites to the Promised Land. He's Moses, the guy who does not make it to the Promised Land due to his own failings, but led an oppressed people out of captivity nonetheless. But Locke is, in the most obvious biblical parallel, Abraham.
Oh, you're sorry. That's okay. But I was the sacrifice the island demanded.
I say it's obvious because the writers have talked openly about Locke and Boone's relationship in Season 1 being this Abraham and Isaac story. It's the one where God wakes up Abraham and tells him to kill his kid, Isaac, for reasons, and Abraham's like, yeah, okay, sure, it's Bible times. We sacrifice our kids all the time. Now, in the story, God intervenes at the last second. Like, nah, I was just seeing if you do it. JK. But good stuff. Good to know there's literally no limit to the insane things I can ask you to do with no follow-up questions. And so we're kind of expecting, as first-time viewers, for Boone to survive. Because Isaac survives. And also because Boone is one of the main characters and is hot. Fiction has come a long way since Genesis, though, and the writers made the way more interesting choice here. Killing Boone and making Locke live with the consequences.
I looked down the barrel of the gun, and I thought was my destiny to get into this place. And somebody died, a kid, because he was stupid enough to believe that I knew what I was talking about. And on the night that he died, for nothing, I was sitting right up there, all alone, beating my hand bloody against that stupid door, screaming to the heavens, asking what I should do. And then a light went on. I thought it was a sign, but it wasn't a sign. Probably just you going to the bathroom.
The death of Boone is important because while Lost likes to pull from the Judeo-Christian mythos, Damon Lindelof, for example, is not a practicing Jew or a Christian. Lost is a show about faith, told from the perspective of those who may or may not have faith. And because of this, Lost can demonstrate the sort of self-fulfilling prophecies that blind religious zeal can create. Locke has a choice after Boone's death. He could have stepped back and realized that he had become completely warped by his desire to be special. And he does indeed cry out and ask God why he is doing this to him. And then the light comes on in the hatch, and Locke interprets this as a sign from God. Is it, though? Like, is this a sign for real? We get the explanation in Season 2, and it's not anything magical, per se. It's Desmond, who's been living down there for years and heard Locke crying and yelling that one night, so he turned on the light. But just because it's not magic doesn't mean there's not some incredible kismet involved here. That happened on a night when Desmond wanted to die, and was maybe planning on killing himself. Knowing that there was still life outside that hatch at that exact moment motivated Desmond to keep at it and await the next sign from the universe.
3 days before he came down here, before we met, I heard a banging on the hatch door, shouting.
But it was you, John, wasn't it? You say there isn't any purpose, there's no such thing as fate. But you saved my life, brother, so that I could save yours.
No, none of this is real. Nothing is gonna happen, we're gonna be okay.
I'm sorry for whatever happened that made you stop believing. But it's all real.
Desmond has an interesting and way more nuanced relationship with faith as a former monk, and in fact discusses the dubious morality of the Abraham and Isaac story with the Irish police chief guy from L.A. Noire.
I find the name the brothers have chosen for the wine made here interesting.
And why is that, brother?
On Moriah is a mountain where Abraham was asked to kill Isaac. It's not exactly the most festive locale, is it?
And yet God spared Isaac.
Well, one might argue that God need not have asked Abraham to sacrifice his son in the first place.
Well, then it wouldn't have been much of a test, would it, brother? Perhaps you underestimate the value of sacrifice.
Desmond is more nuanced, but both Locke and Desmond are inclined to interpret things as signs because of their religiosity and ego.
I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Desmond, but the island isn't done with you yet.
This woman cost me 4 years of my life, 4 years that I'll never get back, because you told me that I was supposed to go to that island. That it was my bloody purpose.
This moment with the hatch is definitely an incredible coincidence. But is it fate? These two would prefer to say yes, it's totally fate, it's important, and we're important and we're special. And while there are many times throughout the show where their faith fulfills them, it just as often leaves them confused, ashamed, and yeah, let's just say it, lost.
You don't like this, do you?
What?
Having to ask questions that you don't know the answers to.
Blindly following someone in the hopes that they'll lead you to whatever it is you're looking for.
No, John, I don't like it at all.
Well, now you know what it was like to be me.
So sorry, I don't really know what the point of that was. It's just been on my mind, and I figured I'd make a little video out of it. I got a lot of lost thoughts. I promise not all of them are related to the Bible. Maybe some of them are, but mostly not. So if you liked this, like and subscribe. I'm going to release a lot of stuff about Lost and probably other shows and pop culture stuff I like, but I'm mostly Lost, to be perfectly honest with you.